to declare a mistrial even after the verdict is reached. The FBI attempting to downplay its use of threat tags to track parents speaking out at school board meetings, in a statement Wednesday calling them simply a statistical tool, but in the process tacitly confirming an FBI whistleblower's complaint. The Bureau is tracking parents, despite Attorney General Merrick Garland's claims to the contrary. GOP lawmakers, including North Carolina Congressman Greg Murphy, are outraged.
This brings us back to the days of, Hoover and McCarthyism, that essentially labeling good, honest American citizens are now being vilified and basically tracked by our own Department of Justice.
The FBI says simply adding threat tags to an individual's files does not mean they're opening an investigation. With a gallon of gasoline hovering above $3.41 on average nationally, President Biden test drove an electric vehicle at a GM plant in Michigan on Wednesday.
Anybody want to jump in the back? On the roof?
The president said electric vehicles and the means to recharge them across the country will be part of how a rebuilt infrastructure will transform the country and move it away from fossil fuels. America is listening to Fox News.
From the Fox News Podcasts Network.
Come try Guam's original Chamorro restaurant with Pica's best 5 years running. Mezcla Chamorro Fusion Bistro. Experience Chef Peter's candied salmon over scallion coconut rice, octopus to naktak, Chamorro platter, and their award-winning gourmet hamburgers. Or if you're looking for something healthy, try their keto-friendly menu. Come and enjoy Mezcla's half-a-day service at their Hagåtña and Grand Plaza Tumon location. Call their Hagåtña location at 479-2652 for reservations.
Ended a strike at John Deere.
Some 10,000 Deere workers have been on strike for more than a month, demanding higher pay and better benefits. Now they've approved a new contract that's going to give them a 10% raise immediately and end the strike. The new deal also gives workers an $8,500 ratification bonus. This latest contract looks a lot like the one the company offered and workers rejected 2 weeks ago. But this one tweaks some performance bonus payments, and it was enough to get 61% of the company's workers to approve it. The new contract covers 12 Deere plants in Iowa, Illinois, and Kansas. Jill Nato, Fox News.
For the first time in 9 years, Mississippi has executed a killer, lethally injecting David Cox Wednesday evening for killing his estranged wife 11 years ago. Cox had dropped his appeals and called himself worthy of death. Oklahoma is scheduled to execute convicted killer Julius Jones Thursday. Despite pleas from thousands of people to stop it, the Innocence Project says Jones, who was 19 at the time, was home having dinner with his family when the murder he was convicted of was committed. The parole board has recommended clemency. Governor Kevin Stitt has the final decision. Travel experts warning it'll be busy at the airports next week.
Thanksgiving travel is expected to return to pre-COVID levels this year, and that could turn into the nightmare before Christmas amid a nationwide labor shortage. Airlines have been struggling to handle rebounding travel numbers, but TSA Administrator David Pekoski says his agency expects staffing to be sufficient, so maybe those checkpoint lines won't be too long for what's traditionally the biggest travel period of the year. In 2019, a record 26 million passengers went through U.S. airport screenings in the 11-day period around Thanksgiving.
Fox's Tom Graham. And I'm Jack Callahan. This is Fox News.
When's the last time you looked at your homeowner's insurance?
A homeowner's policy protects much more than just your house. It also protects you against claims from someone being hurt on your property. If a visitor is injured at your place, how much are you covered for? The smart thing to do is get the answer today.
That's the Insurance Extra Point. Get out there and make something good happen today by calling Guahan Insurance Services at 475-1162 or visit us at the Camacho Landmark Center in Tamuning.
Need to finish the job or start one the right way? Get the right stuff at East West Rental Center. You can switch to easy mode using industrial strength equipment. With years of experience helping builders, East West Rental gives you exactly what you need. Tools for landscaping, concrete, lifts, trucks, tables, tents, chairs, water blasters, excavators, forklifts, air compressors, and more. Call East West Rental Center at 646-1463 or visit them in Upper Tumont. Open Monday to Saturday from 7 to 5, Sundays 8 to 5.
Leah Dunca from Security Title here with a little information about trusts. A trust is a legal entity capable of owning property. It can protect property from issues such as lawsuits or divorce and can be used to distribute property and avoid probate. Many trusts start as revocable but become irrevocable when the initial trustees die. Work with your estate planning attorney to see if a trust is a good fit for your family property. Call the professionals at Security Title. We are here to help.
Guam Auto Spot has the best selection in Buick, GMC, Mitsubishi, and used cars like the 2021 Mitsubishi Mirage starting at $127 per paycheck, 0 down. Call 671-478-AUTO to take a test drive or get pre-approved online at GuamAutospot.com.
Welcome to Tall Tales with Bob Klitzkie, the only show on talk radio where common sense is a lot more common. Phone lines are now open at 888-TALK. That's 888-8255. And now, The Point proudly brings you Tall Tales with Senator Bob Klitzkie.
A well-regulated militia being necessary to the security of a free state, the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. Every day here on Tall Tales, that's how we start the show. That's how I start the show. And I'll be doing that tomorrow. Tomorrow's the last day of the week. Jose and I got to suffer through it, but we'll make it. I have an article about the latest, or about the case that's before the U.S. Supreme Court now dealing with the right to bear arms. I've talked about this a little bit in the past. It's an extremely important case because you loyal tailgaters know, because you hear it every day, that the right to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. Well, there's a couple of Supreme Court cases that hold that the right to keep arms is protected. You can keep a gun in your house for self-defense, but the Supreme Court has not spoken to that other word, the bear word. Outlining the contours of your right to bear arms. Lower courts have been all over the map on this. Some of them have been pretty hostile. The Ninth Circuit reversed a Hawaii case holding where the district court in Hawaii said, yeah, you can parade around in the street with your firearm exposed, and the Ninth Circuit reversed, said you can't. So what the Supreme Court does on this question is very important, and this is a little bit thick. You'll need your Law and Order notebooks. But here it goes. In a current case before the U.S. Supreme Court, called New York State Rifle and Pistol Association versus Bruin, gun owners are challenging New York's, quote, proper cause law for concealed carry permits. Whereas the Second Amendment guarantees an individual's right to keep and bear arms, New York prohibits the bearing of firearms without a license granted on a may-issue basis at the whims of local officials, arbitrarily determining whether a person has a legitimate need for self-defense. On its face, this law clearly violates the spirit of the Second Amendment. Conservatives arguing to overturn it, however, find themselves in the awkward position of arguing against long-standing conservative principles like constitutional federalism and state sovereignty. Implicitly, in this case, the argument for gun rights relies on a century of progressive precedent known as, and here it is, the incorporation doctrine. And I could spend a whole week talking about the incorporation doctrine and how much I dislike it. But activist courts have used this legal theory to impose left-wing policies top-down onto the states. Conservatives are right to insist on a consistent standard. If the Constitution means no school prayer in Kansas, then it also means the right to carry a gun in New York City. In a brief to the court, J. Michael Lutic, a former judge of the U.S. Fourth Circuit Court of Appeals, argues against overturning New York's law by pointing to the founders' view that states were free to regulate the carrying of firearms within their jurisdictions. His assessment is historically correct, but the continued insistence on this creates a double standard under the law. The states ratified the Bill of Rights in 1791 to constrain the power of the federal government, not themselves. It's to protect the states from the federal government, which became the national government, showing that that protection was certainly necessary. The First Amendment, for example, prohibits Congress from making any law respecting an establishment of religion. But early states set their own policies. Under Thomas Jefferson's lead in 1786, Virginia became the first state to separate church and state. But Massachusetts maintained Congregationalism as its state religion for a half-century post-ratification before adopting the wisdom of Virginia. Yeah, so Massachusetts had a state religion, Congregationalism, until 1820, because the First Amendment says Congress shall pass no law. In 1833, let me go back here, rather than resting on the top-down imposition of a federal court, religious freedom won the slow battle of decentralized policymaking among the laboratories of democracy, in other words, the states. And this is one argument advanced in favor of our federal system, where you have 50 subordinate sovereigns and a national government, because each of those 50 states is a laboratory of democracy. They don't all do things the same way. So they can try different approaches to democracy, and the ones that work may be adopted by the others. The ones that don't work will be tossed in the shucks can. In 1833, the Supreme Court upheld this principle of federalism in Barron versus Baltimore, finding that states are constrained by their own state constitutions, not the Bill of Rights. That was the original design. In 1925, however, the court instituted the incorporation doctrine in a case over free speech. It was called Gitlow versus New York, and it was almost a throwaway line. Mr. Justice Brandeis said, of course, the First Amendment applies to the states. Everybody knows that it was one of those. Gitlow versus New York, interpreting the Due Process Clause of the 14th Amendment as it's incorporating the Bill of Rights into the states. In the century since, this doctrine has been cited by federal courts to override wide-ranging state policies on issue ranging from school prayer to gay marriage. Yeah, it's a dangerous cat to let out. It sounds good. Yeah, let's make, the Bill of Rights doesn't apply to the individual states. It only applies to the national government. Well, shouldn't it apply to the states too? It's pretty important. Yeah, let's no. No. You hear people talking about racism, the Solid South, the Democrat South, etc., and the adherence to a concept of, quote, states' rights. Whoa, that's states' rights. Well, I'm here to tell you that states don't have any rights. A state is not a fictive person. It's not a person in the law. A school board can be, a village can be, but not a state. States don't have rights. States have powers. States have powers. And they started out with all of the power until they delegated some of it to the federal government at the Constitutional Convention. And, of course, the federal government has been gobbling it up as fast as it could ever since. So when you hear somebody criticizing a particular policy based on states' rights. Set them straight. There are no states' rights, only state powers. Kevin Gutzman, Gutzman, not Guzman, but Gutzman, a constitutional scholar and professor of history at Western Connecticut State University. Now there is a red letter. It's Western Connecticut State. Yeah.
The forgotten Connecticut State University.
Yes, argues this doctrine is a subversion of the original intent of the 14th Amendment, which was intended narrowly to guarantee rights for emancipated slaves in the post-war South. Additionally, Gutzman asserts the doctrine has twisted the Bill of Rights from a restriction into a grant of federal power, and that's for sure. Whether or not the incorporation doctrine is a progressive perversion of constitutional law, today it's baked into a century of judicial precedent, applied to all manner of left-wing causes until District of Columbia versus Heller in 2008, it had never been applied to gun rights. In that case, the Supreme Court overturned Washington, D.C.'s handgun ban, ruling that states and districts cannot prohibit the individual right to keep arms in the home. That's not right. Heller versus District of Columbia was a godsend for Mr. Justice Scalia because the district is not a state, right?
That's right.
Yeah. So that protection, all those protections in the Bill of Rights apply to the national government and the District of Columbia, not to the states.
Because they have their own leadership.
Yeah. Yeah. So so we had to wait for McDonald versus Chicago to incorporate that reasoning and make it applicable to the states. Chief, let's see. Today, with a 6-3 conservative majority, it seems certain the court will extend that thinking to the right to bear arms. Quote, that's just not how we do constitutional rights, said Justice Brett Kavanaugh during oral argument, referring to New York's policy of blanket discretion for government officials to accept or deny requests for a carry permit. Chief Justice Roberts went further, calling the entire premise of requiring a license to exercise your right unusual in the context of the Bill of Rights. Under the incorporation doctrine, they are both certainly correct. To apply constitutional precedent consistently, the Supreme Court has 3 options. First, they can strike down New York's proper cause law requiring all states with licensing schemes to establish objective shall issue criteria, and that's the way Florida and Ohio do it. Or second, they can go one step further and strike down licensing requirements in their entirety, establishing constitutional carry across the country. 21 states already have it. Or finally, they could take the nuclear option, overturning the incorporation doctrine completely, allowing New York to keep its anti-gun law unchanged and restoring federalism across the board in America. Anything short of these options would amount to a double standard of the law. Now, here is where I find myself on the horns of a dilemma. I don't like this idea of the selective incorporation of the Bill of Rights into the 14th Amendment for the reasons pointed out here. It's just more power for the national government. On the other hand, I don't like New York empowering public officials to turn down permittees for concealed weapons because they don't like the way the guy parks his hair or some other inconsequential reason. So to either outcome is the one that I favor. But I think the first more than I favor the second. I don't like the idea that states have had so much of their power taken away from them because of this doctrine of incorporation. But I know that some of the Supreme Court justices listen to tall tales. I can't tell you how I know that. But we'll see how much influence Tall Tales has on the U.S. Supreme Court. All right, let's go to Zemi Ikotny. All right, so we start out here with the Daily News. And the Daily News must have read the Post's. Well, let me see, is it the Post or their own editorial? One of the two of them wrote an editorial about buses here just the other day. Oh, yeah, it was the Post. So the Daily News must have read the Post editorial on the 16th of November, because here's what the Daily News says. Elected officials continue to shortchange the Guam Regional Transit Authority, which translates to poor services to the community, especially for those who can't afford private transportation. The budget for the agency was $3.1 million in fiscal 2019. That fell to $2.6 in 2021, $2.3 in fiscal 22. Of the agency's 26 vehicles, 13 weren't available for use because of maintenance issues. Regional Transit is using advertisements on buses and shelters to supplement repair and maintenance costs for their fleet of vehicles. The latest deposit from ad revenue was $7,500, according to GRTA Special Projects Officer Richard Ibanez. But that's just isn't enough money to keep the buses running. The lack of vehicles meant a drop in ridership for the Ajuda shuttle by 60 rides between September and October. The Veteran shuttle was down by 100 rides. Public transportation is basic, needed service, especially for those in the lower income brackets. It's needed to get to and from work, etc., medical appointments, basic errands. But Guam's mass transit system is unreliable and cumbersome to use. There are few well-marked bus stops. Riders often endure long waits for a bus, even those that are running on time. The transit agency rests on the seventh day, which means no services on Sunday. Well, you know, it's a government agency. Do we run government agencies for the customers or for the employees? Senators and the administration need to understand how important reliable public transportation is to our community. This is easily accomplished by having lawmakers and executive branch leaders rely on regional transit services for just 1 week for their transportation needs. Well, that would mean that when the governor rides the bus, you'd have to have a cop driving the bus, right? That, in turn, will result in adequate funding so the Regional Transit Authority can provide reliable, consistent services, maybe even on Sundays. Or perhaps it will lead to the realization that GovGuam needs to privatize mass transit services so that competent, reliable companies under government oversight can do the job better, while also generating revenue for the government from licenses and taxes. In either case, those who rely on public transportation would be better served. I'm going with privatization. You know, because what we have here is an extremely bloated administrative bureaucracy. You know, we're paying a director like $80,000. You got a lot of high-paid employees that doesn't get anybody from point A to point B. I've talked so many times about all of the potentials that we have for a real mass transit system, so I'm not going to bore you with that again, but that's what we need to do, and we're not going to get there so long as we run mass transit like we run every other agency. The results don't count. What counts is making sure we get to the right guy as a director and the employees, etc. Okay, let's move on to the Post. Did I lose that editorial? Oh, yeah, here it is. Guam's elected officials need to hone in on what the priorities are for the island and then ensure they're properly funded. Once that's done, then hopefully education will be near the top. The Guam Department of Education is staring at a $45 million shortfall that would impact most of the operations at the department, according to the superintendent. The agency had actually discussed a budget request of $291.4 million, but lawmakers trimmed that to $205 million for the current fiscal year. Department of Education officials were keen on making that work with cost-cutting measures. But let's face it, shutting off the lights at the end of the day and making sure all water faucets are shut tight will help, but not by $45 million. Luckily, two things are working in the government's favor in terms of funds. School enrollment has dropped again, and I've noticed that we're down to 26,000 kids. When I was a director in 1994, it was 32,000. Now, of course, we've split off the military dependents to their own school system, and we've stood up a few charter schools, but boy, that is a pretty significant. And then the population has declined. Not long ago, the number was about 31,000. The second thing is that federal funds to the tune of $34 million will be the epoxy that fills the gaping financial holes. You know, epoxy, like Bondo. Yeah. That still leaves GDOE with a shortfall of more than $10 million, and the government is looking at more federal funds pouring into the island. Perhaps some of that can help GDOE so they can hire the teachers it needs, maybe even give them and school staff the extra 10 or 15% pay that nurses and police officers are getting for possibly coming into contact with the Wuhan virus, and take care of some long-standing debts. Roughly $3.5 million in merit bonuses owed to employees for at least 3 years. There's an additional $1 million in the bonus retention and incentive programs that goes back to 2004 that's never been paid. There's also the matter of nursing pay increase added to its costs this summer by lawmakers. However, when you get your budget reduced, it's harder to cover those mandates, Fernandez said. At this point, we're factoring those costs into our spending plan. If we do get additional resources to cover those mandates, that would be a great solution. And we will be discussing that with the Guam Education Board on Monday, and hope to get to our elected officials to see what we can do to make our department whole. Some of the anticipated federal money will be reimbursement for the earned income tax credit. Lawmakers have either discussed or passed legislation that spends roughly $60 million, if not more. So the money hasn't even arrived yet, and we've spent it already. Perhaps some of that spending can be revisited and money repurposed to help our school children. Additionally, President Biden just signed into law a monstrous $2.3 trillion infrastructure package, which provides $193 million for Guam. Maybe just as GDOE is being forced to cross-level classrooms and maximize certified teachers, lawmakers can legalize budgets to cancel wants with those things that our community and the future of our island community need. It's really amazing how everybody in the legislature, and almost everyone who's ever run, education is my top priority. We got to take care of the kids. But if you listen in on the budget discussions, you know, when the education budget comes up short, and everybody knows it's short, and some brave soul will stand up out in the peanut gallery and say, Mr. Speaker, or Madam Speaker, I have a floor amendment here that I'm moving that would increase the budget of the Department of Education by $40 million to make up the shortfall. The chorus resounds with this plaintive cry, where are you going to cut? In other words, we don't care how much education gets. We got to make sure that we spread it all around because it's a zero-sum game, and we're not going to cut anywhere to give education more money, even though we keep saying that it's our #1 priority. All right. So much. No blue stars today. So much for that. Let's go to the card. Tony wants to take a break before we go. Excuse me. Jose wants to take a break before we go to the card.
The Extra Point with Jerry Roberts of Guam Training.
Hi, I'm Jerry Roberts, and every day on The Ray Gibson Show, I get to comment on the incredibly diverse, fun, challenging, sometimes frustrating, often exciting, but always interesting world of work. I hope you'll be there with us.
You can find daily transcripts of The Extra Point at GuamTraining.com. Tune in every weekday morning at 7:20 for The Extra Point with Jerry Roberts. Brought to you by Guahan Insurance Services and First Hawaiian Bank on 93.3 The Point.
Hafude, konnichiwa,
Patois. Ciao. Enter for a chance to win the 76 Circle K World Cuisine Giveaway. Be one of 3 lucky winners to win a passport of free food from around the world at over 15 different local restaurants. Just stop by any 76 Circle K, purchase $35 or more in fuel to get an entry form. Drive by today and taste the world with 76 Circle K's World Cuisine Giveaway. Visit 76CircleKGuam.com for more details. Some conditions apply. Circle K, take it easy.
We now return to Tall Tales with Bob Klitzkie, soaring over the confusion with his superpowers of truth. Call 888-TALK. That's 888-8255.
So this is what the card looks like this afternoon. I'm gonna go back to Davis versus Habib. We talked about that yesterday, above step recruitment. I've got Adrian Cruz versus the Treasury. Talk about our #1 priority. Our #1 priority is sending Adrian Cruz off on junkets, apparently.
To Europe, right?
Spain, yeah.
Ole.
Ole. Yeah. We've got Bavacqua versus Tall Tales.
Oh ho.
Yeah, that's the way it looks to me. I'll let you be the judge. And then we've got Leven versus Englewood Health. Who is Englewood Health? It's a hospital system in New Jersey. Yeah.
Is this a class action?
Well, Leven's into it up to his neck. And then we've got, talking about necks, we've got Curly versus Pencil Neck.
Not Leatherneck.
My favorite columnist, Jonathan Turley, and what's his name, Adam Schiff, who Russia always referred to as Pencil Neck. And my favorite, though, was Jerry Nadler, who I always referred to as Nads.
No neck.
And then we've got Moylan getting the burn. Still, we haven't gotten to that yet. Egarolu and Helik versus ratepayers. And I've got to repeat about repeat versus repeat. Repeating repeats letter to the editor. Okay, Davis versus Habib. Now, you'll recall that there's a story that I went through a story yesterday about a lady named Sharon Davis, who is a member of the hospital board, who is up for reappointment. Her term has expired. She was reappointed, and she's now before the legislature for a confirmation hearing. Well, it's not hard to see why she was reappointed, because I think, I can't speak for everyone, but I know an awful lot of people are outraged by the fact that Lillian Posadas petitioned to have an above-step recruitment for May Habib to hire her at $75,000. Talk about cross-leveling your finances. So Sharon Davis comes out and said, well, yeah, it's a good thing. It'll improve the morale at the hospital, and basically saying, the hospital needs its own spin doctor, too. And now she's really parroting the party line here, that this is a wonderful thing. That's exactly the kind of board member we need, someone that falls in behind the director when the director is wasting money on PIOs. Now, I'm not saying that the director doesn't need help with communications, but communications is like a lot of other things. It's not like a cow urinating on a flat rock.
What?
Yeah, you can't watch it for 15 seconds and know everything you need to know about it. It's a little more complicated than that, Jose. So a good communications director of an agency has a communications plan. And it goes, it's not a plan for what we're going to say tomorrow. It's a plan as to how we're going to handle the message of the agency over a long period of time. It's strategy, it's tactics. And it's not something that because you're a pretty girl on TV reading the news, you come by naturally. And I know that there are some pretty good communications directors on island. I don't see any of them working in the government of Guam, to tell you the truth. And being a spokesman is not the same thing as being a communications director. Now, I don't know exactly how much PNC was paying May Habib when she left to come to work for the government, but I got a feeling it wasn't in the $75,000 category. I suspect if it was 40, it was a lot. So an offer of 40,000 might have landed May Habib, assuming that she's qualified for the job. Now, I know you're saying, oh, she's qualified. I used to see her on TV every night. Go back to what I just said. That's not what it's all about. So it's bad enough that Lillian Posadas, the executive director, or whatever her title is, of the hospital, has gotten an above-step recruitment for May Habib and is paying her more than she's worth in a hospital that's falling apart, that can't afford it. That's bad. But to have a board member come along and lead cheers for that undertaking is just as bad, because it shows that there's no way that we can cure this. You'd expect citizens who sit on these boards and have some sense of fiscal responsibility are going to say, hey, we can't do that. That's not what we should be doing. But Davis said it's critical to hire the right person for public information, someone who understands distribution and other aspects. Yes, we could have given those tasks already seated at GMA, but I feel like it would have been a disjointed message. Brown asked Davis to understand how the hiring looks from an outside perspective. She had mentioned the bill from Tello during her comments. This measure, Bill 221, amends the law regarding the publication of agency staffing patterns. Another issue discussed at the hearing was Davis' position on the medical campus, etc. But, to summarize Davis's testimony, she thought this was a good idea, that it'll improve morale. Now, I don't see how that improves anybody's morale. Every one of us, I think, has probably worked in a shop where there are other employees, and good morale of the employees depends on everyone having a sense that that they are not being treated unfairly. So when you see someone who is grossly overpaid, and you look at your own pay stub, and somebody else is grossly overpaid, this does not enhance morale. It's a morale buster.
Especially when you've had people who are in the same kind of level of your profession coming in at much higher rates too. Talking about the traveling nurses, right?
Yeah.
And then you say, "Hey, we got to do PIO." Really, 75,000?
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah. Well, is there such a thing as a traveling PIO? Yeah.
200,000.
But, you know, I did a little thinking about it. I got a little bit more on the same subject here, but I did a little thinking about it last night. And I was thinking, no nurse makes that kind of money. The nurses are down around 30, 35, 40, somewhere down in there. That's my understanding. But if you ask yourself, if you're the governor, how much good can a nurse do in a gubernatorial campaign? How good?
Well, she's running out of Band-Aids.
Yeah, but how good is a nurse going to be at media relations, fashioning a message? I mean, if Habib is any good at all, obviously she's got good connections with one TV station. And if she's worth that, then she ought to be like gold to somebody's gubernatorial campaign. Yeah, and the smart money over here saying, yeah, but Hatchak says she can't get involved with that. But yeah, but how do we know?
That's an important layer right there.
Yeah, how do we know? I mean, she can be on the phone. She can do all kinds of things to help a campaign. Maybe after work, maybe before, maybe during lunch, maybe on the weekends, maybe on the phone so there are no tracks. Maybe a lot of things. But that's not the kind of help you can get from doctors and nurses and the other folks that are what the hospital is really all about. Now, KUAM ran a story on a similar subject on Therese Terlahi's oversight hearing, and they ran KUAM story ran 16 pages of above-step recruitments at the hospital. Now, there's a lot of space between some of the items on the pages, and you could probably put it together in smaller pages. But here's an example. At GMH, they've apparently had a hard time recruiting for several positions. In February, they petitioned for above-step recruitment for a data processing supervisor, normally starting at step 1, salary of $45,000, to step 10, almost $62,000. And in February, GMH petitioned for the creation of 2 positions, a hospital certified nurse assistant 1, typically paid at step 1 $24,000, but to be hired at 18 or $42,000. A hospital certified nurse assistant paid at step 1 with a salary of $25,000, but hired at step 18 or $45,000. In April, GMH petitioned for above-step recruitment for a food and beverage manager, normally starting at step 1 with a salary of $49,000, but to be hired at step 10, $68,000. Also in April, GMH petitioned for above-step recruitment for a management analyst 4, normally starting at step 1, salary $49,000, but petitioned to be paid at step 10, $68,000, management analyst. In May, GMH petitioned for above-step recruitment for a program coordinator 4 for capital improvement projects, normally starting at step 1 at $45,000, but hired at step 10 with a salary of $62,000. Also in May, GMH petitioned to hire a hospital respiratory care equipment technician, step 1 at $25,000, but petitioned to be brought in at $34,000. In June, the hospital petitioned for above-step recruitment for an ultrasound technician. Step 1 would pay $29,000, but hired at $39,000. Yeah. Also in June, GMH petitioned for an above-step recruitment for Program Coordinator 3 for Emergency Health Record System, normally starting at 45, Step 10, 62. July, Program Coordinator 4 for Fiscal, Step 1, 49, hired at 68. August, Management Analyst 4, normally hired at 49, Step 10, 68. In October, GMH petitioned for above-step recruitment for a hospital chef supervisor, normally hired at Step 1, 37, but brought in at Step 10, 51,000. Also in October, you see what's going on here? So we have another management analyst, 40 to 56, a Deputy Assistant of Administrator of Operations. Now there's a weighty title, Deputy Assistant.
1-0 for every word.
Deputy Assistant of Administrator of Operations. So there's an administrator of an operations. That person has an assistant, and then there's a deputy assistant. 70 grand. At Step 1 at 70 grand. They recruited this dude at $125,000. We had an assistant operator of operations jumping from 76 to 134. And then this article mentions May Habib. Normally starts at 45 as your. And then in June we had a Program Coordinator 3, 45 to 62. July, a Program Coordinator 4, 49 to 68. August, a Management Analyst 4, 49 to 68. October, I read that one already, the Hospital Chef Supervisor, and so on. Also in October, GMH petitioned for the creation of a Deputy Assistant Administrator of Operations. And apparently that deputy will serve as the assistant to the Administrator of Operations. And so on. And just this month, GMH petitioned for an above-step recruitment for a medical coder, normally 31, this time 55, and a medical coder 2, normally 33, this one 60,000. Now, if I weren't the cynical, if I weren't the cynical person who always sees government hiring in a bad light, I wouldn't come out and say something like this. Are we fattening up the payroll to develop supporters for the re-election of the governor? Or is there some other reason for this movie that Hollywood's going to make called Above Step Recruitment Gone Wild? It sure doesn't look good, does it? With a hospital that's always saying, we need more money. We need more money.
Well, now we know where the bleeding's happening.
Yeah. At the bleeding at the hospital, right? We know how to apply the tourniquet. So, May Habib, I suppose, with all this above-step recruitment and all the negative press that the hospital's gotten out of this, it's no wonder they need to hire a top-notch spin doctor to put the right spin on this. You got to wonder how much time May Habib spent briefing Sharon Davis on how to testify before the legislature. None of this.
She hasn't started work yet, Bob. Oh, wait, she's on already, isn't she?
Yeah, she's already on the payroll.
Well, there, drop a step.
Yeah. So, for someone like me, I'm looking for an effective, efficient government operating within the rule of law, providing the basic government services on at least a break-even basis. This is not basic government services, not even close. I suppose it's within the rule of law. They probably complied with the above-step recruitment formalities, but...
You know what's interesting is none of these are like Maybe step 3, step 4. They really jump.
Yeah, if we're going to do
huge strides here.
In for a dime, in for a dollar, the old saying. Okay, once again, just to remind myself, what I'm looking for is an effective, efficient government operating within the rule of law, providing basic government services on at least a break-even basis, or maybe better than a break-even basis. Here's what we got from the governor. Your money has been used to jet set a cabinet member on a junket to Europe. Adrian Cruz, the deputy director of the Guam Department of he's not the deputy director of the Guam Department of Agriculture. He's the deputy director of agriculture. All right, let's take a short break and we'll come back to the Department of Agriculture.
Come try Guam's original Chamorro restaurant with Pica's Best 5 years running. Mezcla Chamorro Fusion Bistro. Experience Chef Peter's candied salmon over scallion coconut rice, octopus to naktak, Chamorro platter, and their award-winning gourmet hamburgers. Or if you're looking for something healthy, try their keto-friendly menu. Come and enjoy Mezcla's half-a-day service at their Hagåtña and Grand Plaza Tumon location. Call their Hagåtña location at 479-2652 for reservations.
Listen to The Point anytime, anywhere on Odyssey. Odyssey is your new audio home for all the music, news, sports, and podcasts that matter to you. Find your favorite stations like The Point and discover more. Music stations, local and trusted news sources, sports talk and team coverage, plus today's biggest podcasts. Find it all on the Odyssey app. AUDACY.
Yeah. So, I don't know if I can finish this up before the halftime show or not. But as I have said so many times on the show, government. We're looking for an effective, efficient government operating within the rule of law, providing basic government services on at least a break-even basis. Now, we can quibble a little bit about what we mean by basic government services. I suppose there are a lot of different approaches as to what is a basic government service. Sending government employees on taxpayer-paid trips all over the world is not basic government services, even if you use the word Chamorro in your description of the trip. Adrian Cruz, the Deputy Director of Agriculture, left Sunday morning to Madrid, Spain, according to information the President of the Department of Chamorro Affairs reported to his Board of Trustees at a Monday morning meeting. Now, who is the President of the Department of Chamorro Affairs? Melvin Borja.
Really?
Yeah.
And he's also the director of the
Chamorro Independence Commission.
Oh.
Yeah. Well, he's, you know, a member of this probably 24 professional Chamorros in our government of Guam. You know, you ask somebody at the waterwork, what do you do? Well, I'm an engineer. And what do you do? Well, I'm a plumber. And you ask somebody over at GPA, what do you do? Well, I'm an electrician. And you, how about you? What do you do? I'm a lineman. Melvin Borja, what do you do? Oh, I'm Chamorro. Yeah. And here it goes. The governor's office has confirmed that Adrian Cruz's travel was funded by our office, meaning the governor's office, because he is representing Governor Lou Leon Guerrero. Oh, what? Let's take this off the card, and then it's okay. My bad. Wow, Jose, if you happen to have a wet noodle back there, I'm going to whip myself across the fist with a wet...
Can you repeat that? I'm writing this down.
Yeah.
Well, no, I don't.
Yeah, it was funded by the governor's office, so obviously it's her budget, so it's obviously okay. Thank God she didn't take any money from the Department of Chamorro Affairs. All right, that's what Crystal Paco San Augustine told Candid. The trip, according to the president's report, this is Melvin Wanpat's report, is part of an ongoing process to repatriate Guam artifacts scattered throughout Europe and to create a sort of exchange between Guam and the National Museum of Anthropology in Madrid. Basic government services, right? I think, maybe we could open up a Madrid office to make sure that none of this stuff gets away from us. That would be a basic government service, wouldn't it?
Are you for real? Real.
See. Yeah. Now, the article goes on to say, rather than sending Department of Chamorro Affairs President Melvin Wanpat or one of the board members, that would have been even better, send one of the board members, right? Governor Lulian Guerrero instead sent Cruz, who is not part of the Department of Chamorro Affairs structure at all. Well, then what's he taking a junket for? Wow. You know what that makes, that Wahoo nay, lalaludo. Nabububoy, gobyerno nay.
Spain was the original colonizer, right?
Exactly.
Did they go to their protest?
Did they go to?
Did they go to the protest? This what is this anthropology exhibit on Chamorro?
Yeah, so we're going to send crews over there to protest and really hold up signs criticizing the colonizer, right? Okay. Cruz, however, is the chairman of the Historiata Commission. Oh, that's a pretty good one, too. Historiata, however, is not paying for the trip. This is from Troy. Taxpayers are. Oh, I can't tell you how glad I am to know that some of my taxes are sending Adrian Cruz to Madrid.
Correction, Bob, it's Adelup who's paying for it.
Yeah, it's not our tax, it's Adelup. Adelup's paying for it. There is such a thing as a free lunch if Adelup picks up the tab.
Not the taxpayers.
No. Taxpayers are also footing the bill for Mr. Cruz's salary. Well, he's working, isn't he? Which is paid as though he were working on Guam while he's in Europe. Well, he's doing the governor. He's representing the governor. Guam needed to be represented in Spain for an exhibit at the museum where they invited Ms. Leon Guerrero to attend. Mr. Cruz is representing the governor, Ms. Paco San Augustine told Candid. The governor's spokeswoman also sent Candid a copy of the governor's October 27 letter to Margarita Robles, Ministerio de Defensa, where she designated Cruz to take her place in Spain. The text follows, and the letter is set out here. Yeah, it's probably not worth reading the letter. I'll come back to this right after the big halftime show, although it's hard to find anything as entertaining as what goes on in our government.
The Point is KUSG, Hagåtña, Guam, 93.3 FM and 104.3 HD3.
Evidence withheld. I'm Jack Callahan, Fox News. That's the charge from defense attorneys in the Kyle Rittenhouse trial. Telling the judge, prosecutors provided them with a shorter and lower resolution copy of video footage the prosecutors used in the trial.
We didn't have the quality of evidence that the state had until the case had been closed.
That's defense attorney Corey Chirofsky, who asked the judge to declare a mistrial. The prosecutor called it an unknown technical incident. The judge taking the second mistrial motion under advisement. The jury returns in the morning to begin its third day of deliberations. In Brunswick, Georgia, Travis McMichael claimed in his murder trial Wednesday that Ahmaud Arbery forced him to make a split-second life or death decision by attacking him and attempting to grab his shotgun. McMichael, one of 3 men charged with Arbery's murder. He faces cross-examination in the morning. Convicted killer David Cox died Wednesday evening in Mississippi's death chamber, lethally injected for murdering his estranged wife more than a decade ago. The state's prison commissioner says Cox left a letter to be mailed to the family of his sister-in-law who disappeared in 2007. Cox, reportedly the last person to see her alive. President Biden ordering an investigation into why gas prices are so high.
President Biden has told the Federal Trade Commission to look into possible illegal behavior by gas companies. He sent a letter to the FTC saying gas prices at the pump remain high, even though costs for gas companies are declining. He said the price for unfinished gas over the past month was down by 5%, but pump prices were up by 3%. The president wrote he's concerned about anti-competitive or otherwise potentially illegal conduct.
Fox's Joe Nadeau in Washington. AAA pegs the average price for a gallon of gasoline at $3.41. It's more than $1.20 higher in California. America is listening to Fox News.
Always here to help you. This island is our home. Through the years, we've been a friend to the neighbors we have known. Now we're banking on the future. Services that you want to choose. Bank Pacific, where others put branches, we place roots.
Come try Guam's original Chamorro restaurant with Pica's Best 5 years running. Mezcla Chamorro Fusion Bistro. Experience Chef Peter's candied salmon over scallion coconut rice, octopus tenactac, Chamorro platter, and their award-winning gourmet hamburgers. Or if you're looking for something healthy, try their keto-friendly menu. Come and enjoy Mezcla's half-a-day service at their Hagåtña and Grand Plaza Tumon location. Call their Hagåtña location at 479-2652 for reservations.
The House of Representatives censuring one of its own on Wednesday.
Will Representative Gosar present himself in the well?
Arizona Republican Paul Gosar stood in front of the House chamber as Speaker Nancy Pelosi read a censure resolution after a House vote, mostly along party lines, to punish Gosar for sharing in a since-deleted tweet an anime-style video depicting him killing New York Democrat Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez.
That trickles down into violence in this country.
Gosar says the anime video was not a call for violence.
The cartoon directly contributes to the understanding and the discussion of the real-life battle resulting from this administration's open border policy.
The resolution also removes Gosar from the House Oversight and Natural Resources Committees. On Capitol Hill, Jared Halpern, Fox News.
North Carolina Congressman G.K. Butterfield, the latest House Democrat, deciding not to run for re-election in next year's midterms.
Bringing the total now to 14 House Democrats ditching plans to run for re-election in 2022, compared to 10 Republicans. Many, like California Congresswoman Jackie Speer, citing personal reasons. But the major gubernatorial loss in Virginia, combined with slow delivery on the president's agenda, puts the Democrats' narrow House majority at risk in the midterms. The recent ABC Washington Post poll shows 51% of respondents say they would vote Republican if an election for the House was held now, a 10-point lead, the highest in the 40 years of the poll. Republicans say it's why Democrats are desperate to pass the Build Back Better plan now.
Fox's Aisha Hasni. Monsanto has lost an effort to reduce an $86 million damage award to a couple who developed cancer after spraying Roundup weed killer in their yard over a span of 30 years. Closing arguments will be heard in Charlottesville, Virginia Thursday in the trial of several people being sued for damages from 2017's Unite the Right rally. I'm Jack Callahan. This is Fox News.
Hey, let's go to Tango Theaters and watch a movie.
No way, I'm broke. How am I gonna buy snacks?
They have a combo special for the whole month of November called the G's for Giving Combo Specials. You can choose from 2 combos for just $13.75. G Combo 1 with a drink, popcorn, and candy, or G Combo 2 with a drink, hot dog, and chips.
Wow, okay, that sounds good.
A portion of the proceeds will be donated to the UOG Endowment Foundations for scholarships and programs.
Cool, it'll be my treat. I'll buy 2 combos.
Visit Tango Theaters and grab yourself a G Combo special during the whole month of November.
Leah Dunca from Security Title here with a little information about trusts. A trust is a legal entity capable of owning property. It can protect property from issues such as lawsuits or divorce and can be used to distribute property and avoid probate. Many trusts start as revocable but become irrevocable when the initial trustees die. Work with your estate planning attorney to see if a trust is a good fit for your family property. Call the professionals at Security Title. We are here to help.
When's the last time you looked at your homeowner's insurance?
A homeowner's policy protects much more than just your house. It also protects you against claims from someone being hurt on your property. If a visitor is injured at your place, how much are you covered for? The smart thing to do is get the answer today.
That's the Insurance Extra Point. Get out there and make something good happen today by calling Guahan Insurance Services at 475-1162 or visit us at the Camacho Landmark Center in Tamuning.
Guam Auto Spot has the best selection in Buick, GMC, Mitsubishi, and used cars like the 2021 Mitsubishi Mirage starting at $127 per paycheck, 0 down. Call 671-478-AUTO to take a test drive or get pre-approved online at guamautospot.com.
Back on Tall Tales after that big halftime show that we all like so much. It means we're in the second half of Tall Tales for today. And I left off talking about Adrian Cruz's junket to Madrid, costing us big bucks for his ticket, his lodging, etc. And he's going to be paid. He's on the payroll the whole time. And, of course, the answer is, well, he's working. You know, he's representing the governor.
I have a new title for his trip.
Uh-huh.
The Running of the Bull.
Yeah, do you think he'll swing by Pamplona while he's over there in España? It's really disappointing. But, you know, having gone through this, I'm wondering if perhaps that May Habib, the $75,000 spin doctor at the hospital, might be better assigned to Adelup. You know, if the governor is going to persist in these kinds of funding these kinds of junkets, sending Tony Babauta to the United Nations to badmouth the United States and all of these other things, as badly as the hospital needs a spin doctor, perhaps the governor needs one even worse. This one is pretty bad.
It's horrible.
This is pretty bad. Okay, so I guess we can wait for Adrian Cruz to come back, and we'll know he's back because we'll stick our head out the window and we'll hear someone holler, "Ole!" So much for Adrian Cruz, the junket to Spain. Next on the agenda is Bavacqua versus Tall Tales. Michael Bavacqua versus Tall Tales. And a very probably as familiar a name on Tall Tales as mine, because his name keeps surfacing all the time. He writes a weekly column in the paper. He's a member in good standing of the Chamorro establishment on the island here. He's the executive director of the museum. He writes a column in the Daily News. He is the independence guy on the Commission for Chamorro Independence, and so on. So maybe I'm giving myself too much credit, but I think his column today responds to some things that I said in my column in the Pacific Island Times, which hit the newsstands on November 1, which I assigned as homework out there, you'll recall. You remember you were to find out the meaning of the word paper mache. And,
wait, if you signed this as homework, that means Maguette listens to this show.
Very possible.
Because he did his homework and wrote an essay on it.
Yeah. So what I do in my column and on this show, as you well know, is I deconstruct the myth of this whole Chamorro Self-Determination Commission. First of all, if you look at the statute, you know, it's not really about decolonization. It's about Chamorros. It is not about the political status of the island of Guam, the political status of the territory of Guam, decolonizing the island of Guam or the territory of Guam. Now, if we're talking decolonization, that affects me because I'm living in a colony right now. So if we're going to decolonize the island, I'm as interested in it as anybody else on the island. Even as interested as Michael Bavacqua himself. So I've made that point over and over again. And I've been very critical of the legislature, perhaps at the hand of separatists. Separatists are people who want to see Guam separate from the United States, be an independent country, completely divorced from American sovereignty. And I've been very critical of them coming forward with this idea that there are only three options: free association, statehood, or independence. And I pointed out that the only real option there is independence. Statehood is a practical impossibility. Free association is a legal impossibility. I've laid this out in the columns in the Pacific Island Times. If necessary, I can go through it again. So in the third paragraph of the November 1 column in the Pacific Island Times, entitled The Paper Mache Commission, you'll find this language. There are actually only two political status options open to our island: independence or continued membership in the American political family as a territory. Now, this is not Bavacqua's party line. This is the truth. This is the actual facts. This is reality. Quite a bit different from the commission's charade. Starting again, there are actually only two political status options open to our island: independence or continued membership in the American political family as a territory. The advancement of statehood, free association, or independence as realistic alternatives is a political status three-card Monte. Now, you're supposed to look up three-card Monte for your homework, too, but if you don't know what it means, it's this game that the tricksters will play on you. They'll show you three cards. One of them is a red queen. The other two are not face cards. They'll show you that. They'll turn the cards over, and they'll spin them around. You put $1 on the table. They'll spin the cards around, and then when the showman stops spinning the card, you point to the one that you think is the red queen. And if you guess right, he will give you your $1 back and another $1. If you guess wrong, he keeps your $1. Three-card Monte. It's the same operation as the three-shell game, except with the three-shell game, you use walnut shells and a pea. But it's the same proposition. So this is a great tool for scammers because they're very good at moving their hands around, sleight of hand, etc. And you could never guess where the Red Queen is, except that the skilled operator will let you win. You know, maybe 6 or 7 times out of 10. And you think, hey, I'm pretty good at this. And then he'll ask you if you want to increase your bet. So instead of putting $1 down, you're putting $10 down. And before you know it, he's fleeced you out of some serious money. That's what 3-card Monte means. So going back to this column here, there are actually only 2 political status options open to our island: independence or continued membership in the American political family as a territory. The advancement of statehood, free association, or independence as realistic alternatives is political status 3-card Monte, a rigged game designed to present only one result: independence. Independence is bracketed by 2 impossibilities, legal and factual. Free association is a political will-o'-the-wisp, which is legally impossible. Our island is not even quasi-sovereign, as were the Marshalls, Carolines, and Palau Islands when they cut a deal with the U.S. Because of the powers granted to Congress per Article 4, Section 3 of the Constitution, attempts to negotiate a compact like the freely associated states did would amount to the U.S. negotiating with itself. Employing that same constitutional provision, that is Article 4, Section 3, I'm hearing some whispering somewhere, Jose. All right, going on. Employing that same constitutional provision, as you were, yeah, the Congress can grant independence to Guam and then negotiate. But that's independent, isn't it? It's not a unique third status. Wyoming is the least populous state with about 580,000 residents compared to our 160,000, actually 153,000. 153,000 and dropping. As a practical matter, given our relatively sparse population with no prospects to reach even the Wyoming level, the population factor alone makes statehood a practical impossibility. Add to that the fact that the admission process contemplates the new state's contribution to the federal treasury. Rather than contribute, we receive. After eliminating the 2 impossibilities, we're left with 2 realistic alternatives: independence or territory, incorporated or unincorporated. Incorporated territorial status has all the disadvantages of statehood and none of the advantages. Incorporated means federal income tax versus our current setup of the Guam territorial tax plus Section 30 money, U.S. customs duties and collectors instead of duty-free status, no more GITA tax incentives, and the end of the other advantages arising from our extra constitutional status. Our national representation wouldn't change, 1 non-voting delegate to the House. Incorporated status would be the end of any consideration of any kind of self-determination because the Constitution would apply ex proprio vigere. The only exit from incorporated is statehood, a practical impossibility. Note that the Congress could make Guam an incorporated territory by changing 1 syllable in our Organic Act, just taking "un" away from the in front of incorporated. So we currently enjoy the perks of unincorporated. So that's it. As a matter of realism, there are actually 2 choices for us. We could ask, or we could hope that we can continue to be a member of the American political family and improve our position within the family, or we could ask Congress to set us free and declare us independent. And that's it. The other two are a part of that three-card Monte game. So that's what I said in my column. And I said a lot of other really interesting things, a lot of real well-written things, etc., of course. So if you haven't picked up a copy of the Pacific Island Times, beat it down to Payless or wherever you buy your stuff and buy a copy of it. It's a really good newspaper. It's only $1.25, well worth the price. It's the, next to Tall Tales, it's the best news bargain on the island. Tall Tales doesn't even cost you $1.25. Okay, so here's Bavacqua's column for today. Misconceptions on decolonization. Guam's current political status. The first word here is wrong. Guam's current political status and future political possibilities should be essential parts of public dialogue and debate. But they're not, because the Commission on Chamorro Independence, the so-called Decolonization Commission, is not about decolonization. It's about self-determination for the Chamorro people. The rest of you guys, forget it. No self-determination for you, no decolonization for you. So I would agree with this. Guam's current political status and future political possibilities should be essential parts of public dialogue and debate, but they're not. Because we have this government-funded organization for Chamorro self-determination, limiting this discussion to a single ethnic group instead of all of the people that live here, a minority group, by the way, cutting most of the people on this island out of the dialogue. Bavacqua goes on to say, sadly, there are many misconceptions and myths about these issues which hinder our ability to productively discuss the current state and future of the island. Yeah. It's even more unfortunate when media outlets and public figures, now I hope he's talking about me, because this is a media outlet, and I'd like to think that I was a public figure, because I am on the air, and I do write in the Pacific Island Times. Rather than elevating the conversation and enlightening people, take advantage of the lack of understanding some may have and distort the issue to shut down conversation. That's his way of saying, by being realistic and telling the truth, instead of sticking to the party line as made known to us by the Chamorro Decolonization Commission. And then here he goes again. A case in point is the common misconception that decolonization only means independence. Decolonization, as defined by the United Nations, can manifest in three ways. 1, integration with the administering power. 2, free association with the administering power or another. 3, independence. Now, I always, just as an aside, I get a kick out of this. We have a member in Congress, and it's obvious that Congress pays a fair amount of attention to us. I just have this sense, and I haven't done any research on it, that there is a sense in Congress that we are more essential and should be listened to more than some of the minor states. I don't want to keep mentioning Wyoming, but you know what I'm talking about. So, because we're not the lead, we're not the tip of the spear, we're the leading edge of the shield out here. And we ought to be reminding Congress of that all the time. But rather than go to Congress, where we have a delegate who has an office, who has a staff, et cetera, we rather go and deal with a group of faceless bureaucrats at the United Nations. Of course, there are a lot of the hotels around the United Nations headquarters are probably a little bit nicer than the hotels around the Capitol building. In fact, quite a bit nicer. There's no Waldorf Astoria on Capitol Hill. So, we talk about self-determination, yet we're more than willing to trust our fate in this group called the United Nations that we really have no contact with, no representation, that treats us the same way they treat any one of a number of other small places on the globe. And then Bavacqua goes on to say, after going through the myth that there are only three options. There are as many options as the Congress will sign us up for. We would hope with our permission. The Congress and Hawaii could get their heads together and admit Guam as the 8th county of Hawaii. You get to vote for president, you got membership in the Senate, you got all of the trappings of statehood, including income tax. Or, perhaps Congress would cut a deal with the Federated States of Micronesia, a treaty allowing Guam to be the 5th state in the Federated States of Micronesia. That doesn't sound very good. No, that's not. How about being a province of the Philippines? There's some historical precedent for that, because in a sense, the Spanish governed Guam as though it were a part of the Philippines. How about a prefecture of Japan? Japanese have been here. These are all silly things, for sure. But just to limit the choices to the three that the separatists have outlined, leaving only one real alternative, which is independence, is a trick that I don't fall for. And I'm hoping that you don't either. Now, Bavacqua goes on to say, decolonization can mean many things, but when we're talking about political status change, now we're not talking about political status change, we're talking about Chamorros. It boils down to these three options, each of which represents a path to legitimate self-governance. It is true that for the past century, the vast majority of people around the world, when faced with their reality as a colony, have chosen to strive for independence. Yeah, like Hong Kong, right? But this does not mean that decolonization can only be independence. But it does stand for the proposition that that's all that the separatists want. The movements around the world for political change and self-determination in the 1800s and 1900s did focus heavily on nationalism. The world had been managed for millennia largely by empires and kingdoms, and the rights and destinies of most people were lost in the process. As wars weakened those empires, it created opportunities. The world order opened up in sometimes small and sometimes significant ways. Some were willing or forced to fight with colonizers and imperialists to achieve independence. The 20th century has seen several dozen former colonies undergo decolonization, including islands and countries around us in Micronesia, and Asia across the Pacific. How about Africa? That's where it really dug in. The United Nations has kept a list of these colonies or self-governing territories since 1946. The history and reality can range widely, but all are united in still needing to undergo a process of decolonization. Then why isn't anyone on Guam working on decolonization? No one is. And once again, the self-determination of the Chamorro people is not the decolonization of the island of Guam. It is not the decolonization of the territory of Guam. As attitudes have changed and many of the remaining non-self-governing territories are now small islands, most with populations smaller than Guam's, there is a palpable hesitancy towards any fundamental political changing of their political status. This is why the UN, asserts that decolonization is not only independence, but it also includes the other two options. The key is that the end result, the former colony, is genuinely self-governing. There is another misconception in the community that decolonization is anti-American. This is a ridiculous notion. Oh, yeah. The U.S. was born from an anti-colonial spirit and fought for its own decolonization more than 2 centuries ago. Furthermore, when you consider that one form of decolonization is to seek to be a fully and equal part of the U.S., this misconception becomes even more untenable, unless you happen to watch and unless you happen to listen. Now, one more thing that I mentioned here, the lead off of my column that I think helps you put the whole thing in perspective. The Commission on Decolonization for the Implementation and Exercise of Chamorro, this is a question, is the Commission on Decolonization for the Implementation and Exercise of Chamorro Self-Determination really necessary? That's what that commission is called. It's not called the Decolonization Commission for Guam or for the territory of Guam or for the island of Guam. It's the Commission on Decolonization for the Implementation and Exercise of Chamorro Self-Determination. Is it really necessary? That's the question I posed at the end of last month's column. If the people of this island want to sever their relationship with the United States and live in an independent country, then there's a need for that commission. If not, then the commission has no purpose. And I explain in the rest of the column why that's true. Okay, let's break for the 7th inning stretch, and after the 7th inning stretch, I'm going to take a moment to listen to what happened to my stack here.
Yours went out also.
Oh, I got it. Yeah, I've got Frenchie and Senator Duenas, one talking about Adrian Cruz, the other about decolonization. So let's head for Wrigley Field.
The Extra Point with Jerry Roberts of Guam Training.
Hi, I'm Jerry Roberts, and every day on The Ray Gibson Show, I get to comment on the incredibly diverse, fun, challenging, sometimes frustrating, often exciting, but always interesting world of work. I hope you'll be there with us.
You can find daily transcripts of The Extra Point at guamtraining.com. Tune in every weekday morning at 7:20 for The Extra Point with Jerry Roberts, brought to you by Guahan Insurance Services and First Hawaiian Bank on 93.3 The Point.
Everyone has a busy schedule these days, and sometimes we forget to schedule our routine dental checkup and cleaning. Don't neglect your dental health. Schedule one today with Dr. Robert Yang and his Smile Team, conveniently located at the East West Business Center on Marine Drive, Upper Tumon. Call us today at 647-8702 or 3. Again, that's 647-8702 or 647-8703. We make smiles happen.
Okay, here we are, Wrigley Field, world's most beautiful ballpark, the near north side of Chicago. It's not a very good day for baseball today, but Wrigley Field is still there. I've got a couple frequent callers on the line here. I've got Frenchie, who wants to talk about Adrian Cruz, and Senator Chris Duenas wants to talk about decolonization. So I'm going to take Senator Chris first, since he's on the same topic we've been discussing, and then after that, we'll see what Frenchie has to say. Good afternoon, Chris.
Alpha Day, Senator, Honorable Marine, and I saved your honor and my favorite talk show host. Just to make a quick mention, condolences to the Benson family. Judge Benson was an individual that I had a chance to interact with once in a while. A very good friend of my uncle, Cristobal Duenas, district court judge, and just a fine gentleman, and I'm sure you would agree. I know you've worked with him as well, and he's a wonderful man, and God rest his soul.
He really was. He was a judge in the Superior Court up until 1970 when he hauled off to Micronesia. And I appeared before him many times. And, a judge is a judge is a judge. But talk about a gentleman. He really was a gentleman. I wish that I were a gentleman myself. I'm not, according to my own definition. And this is my definition, Chris. A gentleman is one who never gives offense, even when offended. And that was Judge Benson in spades. He was a very polite, well-mannered person, very knowledgeable in the law, a fair judge. We did pretty well by having Judge Benson on our bench a couple of times.
An amazing guy, and you just with that demeanor and personality, it seems as though it would be befitting of the club, and I think he represented it well.
He did.
Anyways, moving along. God bless you, Judge Benson. Moving along just real quickly because I know we got Frenchie there too. I think that you have finally, in your series of articles, finally arrived at getting Mr. Bevacqua to call the question. And I say that because I read his article with interest as well as I've been following up on your series of articles. And you seem to have lent enough of provocation to expose the fact that he almost is calling for the fundamental question. Does Guam wish to be independent or not? And I would say that, okay, backdrop, right? You and I, you know this. I am a statehood fan, and you've, eloquently pointed out to me the reason why the pathway, at least at this point, is not there. But so in stating that, I put myself in a position firmly in the court of wanting a closer relationship with our national government, and with included opportunities for our island, like the congressman has been able to secure over the last several years through diplomacy and through negotiation and through an elevated current status, to me is almost as good as statehood, or you've kind of convinced me that might even be better than statehood, although I'm going to remain firm that I would love to be Guam to be a state. But summing it up, Your Honor, I think that you may agree with me that I think your provocation has basically finally allowed Bevacqua to come out and expose the fact that calling the question is independence or not. And if independence fails, which I think it would quite handily, it would rest a lot on the fact that there's been a complete lack of education. My cousin, Senator Eddie Duenas, as well as others, have for a long time talked about the benefits of statehood and the inclusion, a greater relationship with the United States government, as well as I think that basically it's always been known that free association is a post-negotiated status. It almost seems like something, why would you be voting on that? You need to have some sort of autonomy to negotiate that status, like the free associated states and the way that other agreements have been put forward. But do you agree with me that I think it's time to call the question?
I agree, Chris. But again, my cynical approach to this, my cynical viewpoint is that the separatists are very happy with the situation right now because many of them are holding down good government jobs as and use their government jobs as pedestals from which to spread their separatist propaganda. So the worst thing that could happen as far as they're concerned would be a resolution of the question, does a majority of the people of the island want Guam to be independent? If the answer is no, then they've lost their stick.
Well, I would offer that conducted as a straw poll, you can even kind of make a carve out. Since you're only asking one question, you don't even need to commingle it with other ballots. You can, an 8.5 by 11 could produce 3 ballots of just that simple question. You can do a brown one and a white one if you wanted to. If you had a registry and whatever else, it's good on you. Here's your brown ballot. What do you want to do? But also include the general population if you want to do a straw poll, and just wanted to gauge where things were at. I still think both would lose handily, and almost like the Brits, right? Remain.
Mm-hmm.
I think Remain would overwhelmingly prevail. But I'm just saying that even if you wanted to appease and scratch that itch, if you will, you could do it. And I don't think you'd be in violation, because it would have no. The only ramification would be to ascertain and to possibly formulate some sort of census. But calling the question would at least know. But I agree with you. I agree with you that the gravy train is something that is built in to the process. But I'm just saying and probably also in the last couple of years with Wuhan, there's probably 3 billion reasons to want to put that vote off.
Right.
Anyways, just wanted to see if we agreed on that. But I as a member at some point, I'm going to inject in our meetings that aren't just a formality of going through the process of getting a report. I think it's about time that I work with other members to say, I think it's time to develop calling the question on this issue based on the fact that this is what we're trying to ascertain. And if this is not the will of the people, then maybe it's time to take this offline from government funding to a nonprofit organization and whatever else to educate the people and take the pulse at another time.
Well,
redirect those resources to something important.
You are a commissioner, Chris. As
Yes,
a minority leader, you're an ex officio commissioner. And spoiler alert here, I've put my December 1 column to bed already. And what I'm going to be talking about is the fact that the commission is paper mache. When you read the titles of the people on it, it's something, whoa, you think this is a powerful commission. You stand back from it, and it looks like it's really solid. But when you get up close to it, there's nothing there but paper mache, because the commission, I discovered with my own sunshine law requests, has no bearing on what the, quote, commission says or does. That's just Melvin Wanpet, without any tethering by the commission. So I think you'll find that column very interesting, Chris.
I will, Senator, and just because you've been involved in at least overseeing, I know you weren't the creator of any of them, because a lot of them really are just, there's so much executive function and power that's capable of doing most of the jobs of these things that are created. But I think the real purpose of the senatorial representation, to include the speaker, majority leader, minority, it is basically designed to have representation in the event that legislation or other things are required to move things forward. I mean, you're right. I'm going to be completely straight with you. I mean, there is not much yielding to the commission on the basis of, hey, we don't like what Bob said, and we're going to write a press release. I mean, that's just straight away. I mean, that's been demonstrated. It's a function of an independent decision and a lack of going back and saying, hey, wait a minute, I thought we were supposed to be educating the public on opportunities to vote on decolonization and not taking open positions against those who have the right to express their views and position, but it can look powerful. But the real function of one of 3 of us senators sitting on that commission is basically to move forward on if they have budgetary matters, or if they, and I'm not abrogating. What I'm saying is that truth be told, that's just the way it's been operating, and I think instead of quibbling on that and recognizing the fact that it's not doing what it's supposed to do, regardless of the structure, is what do we want to do? And I, as a commissioner, want to call the question.
Yeah, well, that's good, Chris, and that's what I would expect of members of the commission, for them to make motions, to establish positions, to dictate policy, et cetera, and not to be, you know, figureheads. That like looks really nice. Wow, we've got the governor and we've got the minority leader, we've got the committee chairman, we've got, oh, this is really a group of powerful people. Nobody pays any attention to them, but by gosh, they're powerful.
I agree with you, and I want to give way to Francie at this point. But thanks for entertaining my call, and once again, God bless the Benson family, and what a public servant and an icon.
Always good to talk to you, Chris. Thanks again for calling.
Take care, Senator.
So long. Okay, so we're going to head for Churchill Downs, and when we get out of Churchill Downs, we're going to go from Louisville, Kentucky, straight to Gay Paris.
Come try Guam's original Chamorro restaurant with Pica's Best 5 years running. Mezcla Chamorro Fusion Bistro. Experience Chef Peter's candied salmon over scallion coconut rice, octopus tenactac, Chamorro platter, and their award-winning gourmet hamburgers. Or if you're looking for something healthy, try their keto-friendly menu. Come and enjoy Mezcla's half-a-day service at their Hagåtña and Grand Plaza Tumon location. Call their Hagåtña location at 479-2652 for reservations.
Need to finish the job or start one the right way? Get the right stuff at East West Rental Center. You can switch to easy mode using industrial strength equipment. With years of experience helping builders, East West Rental gives you exactly what you need. Tools for landscaping, concrete, lifts, trucks, tables, tents, chairs, water blasters, excavators, forklifts, air compressors, and more. Call East West Rental Center at 646-1463 or visit them in Upper Tumon. Open Monday to Saturday from 7 to 5, Sundays 8 to 5.
Okay, so here we are, Churchill Downs at Louisville, Kentucky, and I got Frenchie online. I just was peeking at Facebook here while I was traveling around Churchill Downs, and I want to read something that Frank Iriarte posted. Here's what he said. Good afternoon, Bob and team. It's amazing that hundreds of thousands of people migrate legally and illegally to the United States, but for some reason a handful wants independence from the greatest country in the world. How about we help them colonize one of the uninhabited islands north of Guam and start their own independent island and not change our island after all the blood, sweat, and tears shed to get us to our present-day Guam. Give them 2 islands just in case they change their minds. Very good, Frank. Well put. All right, and we go from there to Frenchie. Good afternoon, Frenchie.
So, yeah, from the green ivies of Wrigley Field to the bluegrass of Louisville.
There you go.
Yeah. So, talking about Adrian Cruz, apparently the reason he was selected is because he's the only one in the administration who speaks enough Spanish to have a conversation. Now, I know he's not fluent because I've talked with him in Spanish, but he can hold a pretty decent conversation. One thing that candidate miss is that he's not going alone. He has an entourage of 2 assistants, so that also will probably comes from the pockets of the taxpayers of Guam. And one question I had is, we know he's the Assistant Director of Agriculture, but he's also on the Commission for Decolonization, or one of those, and he's the Commission for the implementation of marijuana rules for commercialization. And I think both those commissions are paid positions. So he's triple dipping.
Got a nice deal. I wonder if he gets paid in pesetas.
Well, I don't know. Maybe Troy can investigate and find out, you know. So that was my little take on Adrian. And then when I was listening to the conversation about the Che Bevacqua, I have mentioned several times that their roadmap for independence is what's happening in New Caledonia. And New Caledonia, by the way, is holding an election on December 12th for independence. It's the third one. They lost the first two, and now they are doing a third one. But there is a little stone in the puddle, is that the independence, it's actually called the Socialist Kanak Independence Party, who is actually running the autonomous government right now. They want the local election to run the local government, has decided to boycott the election because Macron kind of got peeved with the Australians, and the Australians are the biggest backer of the independence movement because they do not like to have French-speaking people in the Australia, Mare Australia, if you wish. And so it's interesting. Macron got peeved and kind of they had to help the independence movement by refusing to have people that had not lived on the island at least 6 years to register to vote. That included whites and Asians that live on the island. And there was a lot of backlash. And then at the last minute, I guess he got upset with the AUKUS alliance and the submarine deal with Australia. He decided that he was going to let everybody vote. And so now the pro-independence people are boycotting the 12th of December election, which is basically built on papier-mâché. And even though it's a third election on independence, it in fact is the sixth one since 1989, which is when the French armed forces went to liberate some of the gendarmes that had been taken hostage by the independent goons that had kidnapped some gendarmes at night in their barracks. So it's interesting because the roadmap that New Caledonia and the UN has been using is kind of a death by 1,000 stroke, and it sounds like that's what Bevacqua and Underwood are trying to achieve, like putting people to sleep and going at it in little increments, a little bit at a time. You erode the whole system, and then unless you have people like you, which I read your article in the Times. It was a very good article, very well argumented and well documented, which kind of really forces them to get out of the woodwork, to, instead of hiding in those cushy government jobs that they have, where they are basically termites in the system. This is interesting development for us, but that's something we need to watch out. The result from that election in South Pacific on December 12th. Actually, I think I will be on the plane to Europe when that happens. But so two interesting small information, but something to keep in mind. And then we'll see when Adrian comes back what kind of concession he would have got from the Spaniards. I think they're trying to get one of Magellan's document about the island or something like that they can put in the museum and allow Bevacqua to go around like a peacock and make some fake new declarations on new things. So we'll see what happens. But it's interesting that apparently the person that has kind of facilitated that trip is the catechumen for the NCW at the University of Guam. because he is that's his specialty, that sector, and as we know, they have very good relation with Adelup. So interesting things to keep on watching.
Well, that would be quite a combination. The separatists aligning themselves with the neo-catechumenal way.
Well, that would make sense because the neos always like to have the most gullible public as possible in order to push their heretic point of views. So. And as I've said 2 years ago, now that they no longer control the archdiocese, they are controlling Adelup. So they have a lot of key people in that administration. People kind of forget that, and it's not, and probably explain the lack of forthcoming from the administration on a lot of subjects because they have that culture of secrecy. So we'll see. Keep on watching.
Yeah, we'll keep an eye on things, Frenchie. You and I, it's our job, right, Frenchie?
That's correct. And then with the help of Jose,
Of course.
That's why the song says, Jose, can you see, right?
That's the national anthem.
Yeah. All right. You have a good afternoon.
Good talking to you, Frenchie. The drum roll.
I don't know where that came from.
Oh, okay. So let's see, I got about, 3 minutes to go? And I don't know if I want to start the next item on the card or not. It's Leven versus Inglewood Health. Maybe I'll just give it a shot here. Not as dynamic as Adrian Cruz going to Spain. But there's a national battle over hospital mergers. And Leven Camacho has jumped in and has filed legal papers in this battle over hospital mergers. Let's see, must be GRMC and GMH, right?
Nope.
No, it's it's the hospitals are located in Hackensack and Englewood, New Jersey. Yeah.
Is that the next junket?
Maybe so. We got to check with Adrian Cruz when he gets back from Spain and see if he's going to head off for New Jersey. Some 23 states have voiced opposition to Englewood Health's proposed merger with Hackensack Meridian Health, filing court papers in a Federal Trade Commission case to say they've seen how hospital consolidation raises healthcare prices without improving the quality of care. Whoa. The proposed merger has attracted national attention as a test case of the federal government's power to intervene in the increasing consolidation of the hospital market in the United States. 9 friend-of-the-court briefs have been filed in the case so far by national trade organizations ranging from the American Hospitalization to Catalyst for Payment Reform, an independent nonprofit that works on behalf of employers and healthcare payers to get better value for healthcare spending. Yeah, this kind of thing. I'm really interested in this. I'm going to subscribe to a Hackensack newspaper so I can stay up to date with it. I turned the page in the article. Now, even the Pacific Territory of Guam has joined a friend of the court brief filed this week. No! Now, why would our Attorney General be so caught up in hospital mergers in New Jersey? I'll just leave that question hanging here until tomorrow. Maybe the Attorney General will call in and explain. Okay. Today is Thursday. We'll be back again tomorrow to wrap up the week. It's been good chatting with you with another episode of Tall Tales, and signing off with Let's Go Brandon.
Point is KUSG, Hagåtña, Guam, 93.3 FM and 104.3 HD3.
Claims of prosecutorial misconduct. I'm Jack Callahan, Fox News. Defense attorneys in the Kyle Rittenhouse trial have filed a second motion for a mistrial, claiming prosecutors withheld evidence from them by giving them an inferior copy of video footage.
Judge Bruce Schroeder did not rule on the multiple requests for a mistrial and allowed the jury to re-watch the video in question. But he also gave a warning to prosecutors, saying if any issues with that piece of evidence come up later, it's going to be ugly.
Well, I persistently warned the state that, there's a day of reckoning with respect to these things.
As the jury reviewed video evidence inside the courtroom, just outside, a fight broke out between a Kyle Rittenhouse supporter and two Black Lives Matter protesters who were quickly arrested.
Fox's Garrett Tenney in Kenosha. Travis McMichael, the man who fired the fatal shot in a confrontation with Ahmaud Arbery last year in Brunswick, Georgia, told the court in his murder trial yesterday the victim attacked him and tried to grab his gun. Prosecutors will cross-examine him today. McMichaels and two other men are charged with Arbery's murder. Trying to downplay it, the FBI Wednesday essentially confirmed an FBI whistleblower's complaint that they are using threat tags to track information about some parents who've spoken out about mask mandates and race curricula at school board meetings. The Bureau, in a statement, said the tags are merely a statistical tool, which they also use to track people suspected of trafficking in drugs or humans. In Memphis, police are looking for the gunman who shot and killed rapper Young Dolph yesterday at a cookie shop. It's the fourth high-profile shooting in Memphis in 2 months, and Police Chief Van D. Turner says things have to change.
It should not have taken the death of Young Dolph to galvanize us, to galvanize the community, to get us where we are. But now that it's happened, what's next?
Hundreds of fans gathered at the shooting scene to mourn the killing. America is listening to Fox News.
Get all of your favorite Fox News podcasts ad-free on Apple Podcasts with Fox News Podcasts Plus. From Trey Gowdy, the Fox News Rundown, Will Kane, Brian Kilmeade, and so much more. Go to foxnewspodcasts.com for all the details. The Fox News Rundown, a contrast of perspectives you won't hear anywhere else. Your daily dose of news twice a day, featuring insight from top newsmakers, reporters, and Fox News contributors. Listen and subscribe now by going to foxnewspodcasts.com. New from the Fox News Podcasts Network, Dana Perino, co-host of the 5 and America's Newsroom on Fox News Channel, returns to the world of audio with a new limited-time podcast, Everything Will Be Okay with Dana Perino. Building off the success of her best-selling book of the same name, Dana provides an unequaled brand of advice built on real-life experience and interviews experts and individuals that make a difference in the lives of others. Subscribe and listen now by going to foxnewspodcasts.com or wherever you get your podcasts.
There's new, unflattering information about President Biden's nominee to be the administrator of the federal banking system.
Fox News has obtained a Wisconsin Department of Justice criminal background check of Shale Omarova. She's the president's nominee to lead the Office of Comptroller of Currency, the OCC. Now, according to the background check, she was arrested back in June of 1995 in Madison, Wisconsin, with a count of misdemeanor retail theft. The White House says she's been open and honest about it. It was 25 years ago, and they are unmoved by the report. Quote, Shale Omarova is eminently qualified and was nominated for this role given her strong track record of regulation and strong academic credentials. The White House strongly supports this historic nomination.
Fox's Kevin Cork, the longest prison sentence yet from the January 6th incursion at the U.S. Capitol building, was handed down yesterday.
Jacob Chansley, otherwise known as QAnon Shaman, the guy whose picture is always shown when discussing the January 6th protest at the Capitol, with his face painted red, white, and blue and wearing a Viking-esque furry hat with horns, is being sentenced to 41 months in federal prison after pleading guilty to obstructing law enforcement that day. Chansley has been in custody since his arrest last January. He was one of the first people to breach the Capitol and made it as far as the vice president's chair in the Senate chamber. Eben Brown, Fox News.
Toyota has recalled 227,000 2018 and 2019 Camrys in the U.S. over concerns the car's braking assist systems could wear out, increasing the risk of accidents. President Biden ordering an investigation into why gas prices are so high, telling the Federal Trade Commission to probe potential illegal activity by gas companies. South Korea says it's received a request from the U.S. to release some of its oil reserves in response to rising prices. Reuters reporting the administration Organization has asked several of the world's largest oil-consuming nations to start releasing some of their crude oil reserves in an effort to lower prices. I'm Jack Callahan. This is Fox News.
Oh, KFC, oh, KFC, original and crispy. Happy holidays, folks. Colonel Sanders here. KFC is here to help feed your holiday hunger with our 6 or 12-piece family meal. They both come with your choice of our delicious KFC sides, biscuits, and a personal gift from the Colonel. 2 free glass food containers. Have a safe and happy holiday season from KFC Guam. It's finger licking good.
You might be a tailgater. If every time you hear a car horn and you laugh out loud, you might be a tailgater. If you can recite the Second Amendment along with Bob, you might be a tailgater. If your hands conduct an orchestra during the big halftime show, you might be a tailgater.
Tune in to Tall Tales with me, Bob Klitzkie, Monday through Friday at 4 p.m., only on 93.3 FM. And you, too, can become a tailgater.